Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Underworld Podcast, your weekly source for all the latest breaking Star Wars news, rumors, and discussion. And this week, it's Andor time. That's right, we are breaking down the 3-episode premiere of Andor, the newest live-action Star Wars series on Disney+. So much to get into in these episodes, and we're going to have a real fun time talking about them here. First, though, introductions are in order in case you're new to the show or you've forgotten who we are. That can happen. My name is Dominic Jones, and with me, as always, is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Whew, yeah, it's good to be back. 6 days ago, we were doing this. It's kind of weird to be doing it so early, but my goodness, we have a very special occasion to be doing it for. And literally have not had enough of a chance to watch this episode and properly decipher it. It's still just rattling around in my head trying to process it all because it's a lot of Star Wars. Basically, just watch a Star Wars movie, basically. Just like a slightly shorter Star Wars movie, partially on my phone. And it's a lot to get into. But yeah, we've got a lot of good Star Wars to talk about tonight. It's going to be great.
Yeah, there's a lot of directors out there that have strong feelings about watching movies on your phone. We haven't yet heard what Tony Gilroy thinks of that. So we'll give him. We'll see what he says. See how he feels about about all of this. But yeah, basically a Star Wars movie. When you add it all up, it's about 2 hours, which is a pretty nice treat. Also with us, as always, good friend and co-host Chris Seekell.
I'm just having a really hard time wrapping my head around the concept that it's been pretty much 6 years since Rogue One came out.
Yeah, that's upsetting.
But what is the kind of exciting part of that is that this show really marks the beginning of the next generation of Star Wars content, because it is a show entirely based on something that was put out after Disney started making content. And we've had, bits and pieces of maybe Star Wars Rebels and things appear. But I really do feel like this is kind of like the first time that we're kind of into a kind of a deeper layer of Star Wars. You have like the Star Wars Iceberg, where there's A New Hope in the original saga, and then Rogue One is a spinoff of that, and then Andor is a spinoff of Rogue One. So we're at Generation 3 right now, and it's really exciting to see what shape it's taking, because I wouldn't say it's necessarily a chip off the old block, which is fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes I'll hear from folks who aren't really into Star Wars. They'll feel like they have to justify not being into Star Wars to me. And I'm like, no, you don't have to. People just like different things. But one thing you'll hear from them sometimes is it's a little bit tough to follow where stuff is in the timeline. And I'm sort of seeing why that is as you lay out the Star Wars iceberg there, Chris. It's like we are 3 levels deep. It's not like you can just watch. This is a prequel to a prequel to a prequel. And then there are prequels to this that are completely separate. And you're like, well,
people have been saying that to me for 15 years now, and about, back in, I don't know, 2006 or 7 or 8, and people like, I don't know, Star Wars just confusing me. I'm like, well, the movies that came before, after the ones that just came, and that's it. And then there's an animated show you may or may not have seen. Now it's like, okay, I get it now. I understand your confusion.
Yeah, people are longing for the days when everything was numbered. It's like you could start with 1 and go to 9. It's fine.
Maybe they should give an arbitrary number to every single Star Wars project.
Yeah, oh my gosh, show number 24. I love that show.
This is the thing you have to watch.
Yeah, they can adjust them too. That other voice you're hearing, of course, with us as always, Hannah Raeside.
Hello there. I am so impressed with this show, mainly because I think this is the best showcase of Star Wars naming. We've got the coolest names in this show. Every character has just such a like grungy, gritty, like kind of name, except for maybe not my favorite character, Tim with two M's, which I'm sure we'll get into. But this was
easy to remember that one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's just like, Bix,
French-
Kayleen, Cassian, Andor. Oh, a guy named Tim from
Tim.
from a Scottish guy named Tim.
Right? Oh, but I'm sure we'll have a lot to unpack. Got some actually not as popular opinions on these first 3 episodes, which I'm keen to share. So yeah, today's going to be a good show. I'm going to be smiling the whole show because it's just exciting to get a premiere of any Star Wars thing anyway. So yeah, what a good day to be a Star Wars fan.
Sure.
That it is. Yeah, the cool names in the show makes up for the fact that this might be the laziest Star Wars title of all time, which is saying something in a franchise that has a movie called Solo: A Star Wars Story. Andor is, I mean, there's so many titles that better titles that are out there. The book of Andor, or Rebel Agent, Rebel Spy. So many things that could have been there.
True.
One thing that I really enjoyed about these 3 episodes, and we'll get into the deeper discussion in a minute, but I just want to bring this up, is the continued expansion of the vocabulary in Star Wars. And, we've always had a little sort of unwritten rule about this show of you can only say words on it that are said in Star Wars. And I love there's 2 more that we can bring in here. And let me just say, in honor of Andor, holy shit, what a premiere. So...
Brilliant.
Bring it on.
So we're gonna get to the review in a minute, but real quick, we want to remind everybody we have a Discord now. You can join the Star Wars Underworld Network Discord. That's right. You won't find Dominic there, but you'll find all of us there. And maybe if you keep bugging Dominic, he might show up.
And I will stop you there really quick. I was going to say this for the end, but I'm going to go ahead and announce it now. So we're doing this show on Wednesday.
Wait, Ben, you're saying we have an announcement? We didn't have an announcement last week.
I have an impromptu announcement myself. I didn't discuss this with anybody. I know
Let's go.
It's
Let's hear it.
It's not that big of a deal. You're gonna hype it up.
Yeah, I'm so good at
yeah, drum roll.
Right. So we do this show, normally speaking, Thursdays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. We will not be doing a show tomorrow night on Thursday because today is Wednesday when we're doing this special occasion. Yes. So in lieu of a new show, I got some free time. I'm not gonna be doing anything tomorrow night, so I thought maybe I'll just hop over to Discord and have a little hangout, a little get together. So definitely go check out. So basically around the same time as the show, but 9:30 Eastern, you head over to the Star Wars Underworld Network Discord, one of the voice channels. I'll be hanging out over there. So if anyone wants to chat with me, chat with anybody else over there, we'll chat about Andor, we'll chat about whatever you want to talk about. Kind of a podcast that's not being recorded. We're just gonna shoot the breeze, talk Star Wars. So yeah, definitely go.
There's a word for those. I think a podcast. I think it's called a conversation.
What? No,
a phone call.
Really? That's a good point.
It's a thing. I've never heard of one of these.
So
and
Ben,
be completely uncensored because I'll be off recording too.
That's
so,
right.
Watch out.
So you get to hear more than the Star Wars vocabulary from Ben.
He's got a really thick Southern accent in real life, off air.
It's all his character. You get to hear Ben Hart with no E over there.
No, you get to hear Ben Hart with an
E.
Yeah.
And Ben, how might people find their way to the Discord as the door is always moving?
The door is always moving.
Revolving door.
Look, if somebody knows how to make a permanent link to Discord, let me know. I have no idea. I'm a Discord noob at this point. All I know is to make an invite link and post it on social media, and they're like, "Oh, it's only going to be good for a week." I'm like, "Well, that doesn't do me any good. I don't want to keep updating the link for the rest of my life." So that's a bit weird. But yeah, I promise I will post a link on social media, like right now, so that you guys can get over there if you haven't already in there.
So check that out. And the other fun thing that we do on Discord is we get a little head start on these discussions because we have a spoiler chat room that people can use to talk about Andor and any other projects that are coming out right away to get a jump start on the discussion before the show. So that's also fun. So I know a bunch of people were over there last night and early morning, depending on where you lived, talking about Andor as right after it came out. So check that out, Star Wars Underworld Network Discord. Please subscribe to this channel. If you haven't, you can support us by super chatting with us, by becoming a channel member. You can find our merch over at patreon.com/theswu. We also have exclusive content over there. You can give us some feedback at swunderworld@gmail.com. And don't forget to leave a review on the podcast app that you're listening to us on if you're consuming our content that way.
All right. Well, let's get into things and talk about Andor. We're talking about episodes 1, 2, and 3, of course, all written by Tony Gilroy and all directed by Toby Haynes. No episode titles as of yet. I know with Mando, sometimes it takes a little while for the episode titles to be updated. But I checked about an hour before the show, and there's still just episodes 1, 2, and 3 on Disney Plus. So we'll see if they change that. But if not, who really cares? It's all that matters is, are the episodes any good? And let's talk about that specifically. We'll go around the table, give our initial impressions of episodes 1 through 3. And Ben, it's a new show, but the same format. We're going to throw it to you first. What did you think?
I would be offended if it didn't go this way. Or at least be surprised. Yeah, so going into this, obviously, like, watching all the trailers, doing all the discourse, listening to all the cast crew talk about this, and it's going to be something different we haven't really seen before. As much as I hyped myself up for this is different kind of Star Wars, y'all, it's even more different than I could have possibly imagined. This is a window into, this is the same Star Wars universe we've all been seeing, but it's completely through a different kind of window, different kind of camera, however you want to put it, that we've ever seen before. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure about this show yet. I really am not. This could be my favorite Star Wars show ever. It might be my least favorite. I don't know yet. In regards to like Star Wars, for me, is above everything else. Even my least favorite Star Wars thing is still pretty high up there. So I'm not saying I hate Andor by any means possible. There's so many good things that I could rant and rave about all day. And I will in the next 2 hours. But, it is very different. It's a very different tone. It's a different feel. It's the universe that we're kind of used to. It's kind of the all the ingredients, but done in a different way. And regardless if I love it or hate it, I think I can't help but applaud Tony Gilroy and everyone involved with this for making something that felt different, that even feels different from the Star Wars we got a few months ago. You would think in this day and age that they would be making Star Wars and it would all feel the same. It's all just, the same production company doing it. No, it doesn't. It's not. This is very different. We're getting some of the most diverse and different Star Wars that we've ever gotten. And Star Wars in the past has been very different. Each film has felt different. Each TV show has felt different, from animation to live action to whatever. But Andor is a breed of its own, and it really runs the gambit on tones and styles and cinematography, everything. It's a beautiful, gorgeous show. The action is great. There's a little bit of humor, which is great, I think is a great thing. And of course, the performances are amazing. Some of the best acting I think we've ever gotten in Star Wars has been in these first 3 episodes. So I'm looking forward to obviously getting more into it. I want to watch the episodes more because I only watched like the 3 episodes back to back at 4 a.m. last night. And then I watched the first episode again today. That was all I had time for. So yeah, the fact that I'm wanting to go back and watch it some more says something about how much I liked it. And so that's always a barometer for me, but ultimately this is different. This is unique. This is something that I think I want more of from Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it, Ben. We're recording on Wednesday. The episodes premiered Wednesday morning at 3 a.m. if you're on the East Coast. It did make it tough to watch these episodes a second time. So I will say for myself, if I have a hard time remembering what's in some of these scenes, that's why. Because I couldn't justify staying up until 3 a.m. because we talked about this on the pre-show. Staying up till 3 a.m. for a 45-minute episode, fair enough. 3:45. Still nighttime. Still, it's very, very late to be going to bed, but you can go to bed at that point. 5 a.m. is morning. And if the episodes are 2 hours long, they end at 5 a.m. So I couldn't just make that justification for myself. So yeah, only one viewing, but lots to say as we will continue to discuss. Hannah, over to you now. Your thoughts on the 3-episode Star Wars Andor premiere, as it says, scrolling across the bottom of our screen.
Yeah. So very, very similar to you, Ben. Very, very similar opinion. You almost took the words from my mouth of this was a very different show. This was kind of prefaced to us. We knew this, but still I had the same experience being like watching it and going, oh, this is quite different, isn't it? Yeah, this is quite different. But I think it's such a positive. It is such a positive, the fresh kind of new perspective of Star Wars we're getting. And, you know, I can see it in the comments, but we're all going to probably talk about today how well Tony Gilroy has pioneered this show for us. And I think he really sets a good example of what it means to kind of absorb and understand Star Wars and to tell a story that just isn't a little, you know, chapter book story, but it's actually something really meaningful to many people of, you know, many backgrounds. So I think the preface of just this show being so new and fresh is just so invigorating for the fandom, I think, and for Star Wars. And like Chris, you were saying before about the different, or maybe this was this in the pre-show or just before the show? We're talking about the levels of Star Wars.
I think I was talking about that.
Yeah. Like the different levels of Star Wars that there are, and the depth and time eras, and you know, and I definitely feel like this is unveiling a new kind of era of Star Wars and period of Star Wars for us. So as I think it's 100% positive of this show being so new. But my personal kind of experience of it, I did take a second to kind of grab hold of the show and kind of really get into what was happening. But in saying that, it did only take me the 3 episodes. I think, but you know, by the start of episode 3, I was really engaged with like the township we're in and the kind of the people around Cassian and going, okay, we're getting this information to piece together Cassian, and you know. Episode 3 kind of ends with him flying off with the Luthen. So I think it's going to take off from here. But yeah, I kind of had this funny experience where it did take me a good little while to grab hold of these episodes. But lots of positives. Very, very much enjoyed this premiere.
Yeah, we'll get into a lot of that more as we go along, because they weren't lying when they said this show was going to be different, and we'll get into all the different ways how. Chris, your thoughts?
So unlike you, Dominic, I made the mistake of staying up all night, and I will say that I, aside from like closing my eyes and having a nap or so, I really haven't slept since this show has come out, nor before the previous night.
So the delirium will hit around the 45-minute mark of this episode.
While I do remember the show probably better than some of you because of that, I may be too tired to even remember what I've seen.
This is going to be like, I like the part where Elrond hung out with Cassian.
Yes, I'm sure that might come up at some point. Yes, and there's only one Starbucks coffee in there too, so not a whole lot of fuel to make it through the day, but I'm trying. So this is the take that I'm going to give this. I think this is a watershed moment in Star Wars storytelling. I think this is maybe not quite as big as 77 and 1980, which are, I think, the 2 biggest moments in Star Wars. One, just it coming into the world, and 2, it becoming a franchise and not just a one-off movie. But this is, I would put this up here in some of the top moments of when Star Wars broke new ground and became something different. And here's why, is I've often been critical of the shows that they make for young kids, that Lucasfilm makes for young kids. And the reasons why I've been critical of them is because I grew up with Star Wars before I could read. Before I could write, before I was in school, I was watching Star Wars. That was my education in some ways. And so I feel like all of Star Wars up until this point is made for truly all ages. And so I feel like, you know, if you have a 4, 5, 6-year-old, I wouldn't start them on the animated short stuff that they make now for them. I would just show them A New Hope or show them The Phantom Menace and Jar Jar. I think they're going to like it and understand it just as well. I don't think it should be dumbed down or simplified for them. I think the human mind's pretty complex. This is the first time where something has come out that I feel like would not be able to be grasped by a child. I believe that the show is an adult show, and at the very least a show for adolescents. But truly, there's multiple reasons why I think this. One is that just the content itself, the subject matter, is pretty adult. There are a lot of topics that we now can talk about on this show that we've never touched before on this podcast ever, because we're a pretty clean show. We don't really have an after dark version of our show outside of some certain podcasts done at some conventions a few years ago that may or may not still be on some feed somewhere. There's a lot of topics in this show that are now open for discussion that are much more adult topics, which is very fascinating. And it's not something, I wouldn't really want to have a conversation with a 5-year-old about the first scene of this show. I don't really think it's something a 5-year-old needs to watch, to be honest. I wouldn't show my 5 or 6-year-old the first scene of this show. And also, I feel like just the complexity of the story and how dialogue driven it is, and how you have to just be sharp and just notice just a line here or a line there, or these little tiny cues to fully understand exactly what's happening in certain spots. That's something that will go over a lot of people's heads. Me, delirious, not having slept all night, watching the show at 4 a.m. in the morning, I was missing things that were being said because it was just happening so quickly and it was so complex. And it wasn't until researching it a little bit more and seeing what other people's breakdowns of it were, and then watching it again the next day with subtitles, paying attention to the words, that I fully understood every single plot point and subplot point that was going on with every single character in the show. And that was difficult to do. So for both the complexity of the show and how character-based and dialogue-driven the show is, as opposed to plot and action-driven that Star Wars usually is, with a lot of exposition, there's no exposition in this show, barely there. And then just the subject matter of the show. This is really, to me, the first adult Star Wars piece of media that is on screen, and that's really, really fascinating to me. So that's my takeaway, and I think it in a lot of ways, you can judge it on its own merit, but it's difficult to even compare it to the rest of Star Wars because it's just a different type of story. It's a different type of thing than what the rest of Star Wars is. But I do feel positive, like you said, Hannah, about it. I think that it's good that Star Wars is going in this direction. I'm excited to see what it can do, breaking new ground that really hasn't been broken before inside this universe.
Big time.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying there. I don't know if I would go quite as far as to say it's the number 3 biggest moment in Star Wars, after 77 and 80. But it does for me. It fulfills something that I've wanted from Star Wars, and something I thought we'd be getting from Star Wars ever since October 30th, 2012. Which you say it's distressing that Andor was 6 years ago. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary of that, which just boggles the mind. But anyways, ever since Disney took over, I thought, here we go. We're going to have different types of Star Wars for different audiences. And, there will be some things that are kind of the catch-all, bring everybody in, fun, classic Star Wars adventures that you think of when you think of Star Wars. And I sort of figured that the sequel trilogy would be that. And then the Star Wars story films, the standalone films, would venture off into those new territories. And they started to do that with, Force Awakens followed by Rogue One. Force Awakens is a very classic Star Wars adventure. It's, hits a lot of the same beats as A New Hope, for better or for worse. But, it was all about capturing the feel of watching Star Wars, of telling audiences Star Wars is back. Let's go. Then you have Rogue One, which is, we're going to tell a story in the Star Wars galaxy. I'll have connections to the stuff you know, to the larger myth, to the larger mythology. But it's going to kind of be its own thing, and it's not necessarily going to play by those same rules. And I think the original version of Rogue One, the Gareth Edwards version, probably pushed that even further. But it had other problems that needed to be corrected. And I think as those corrections were made, they maybe, reined it in a little bit to have it fit more in the classic Star Wars tradition. And then, since then, all the subsequent movies, with the exception of The Last Jedi, which really, really, really tried to do something different, again, for better or for worse, Solo and Rise of Skywalker very much tried to play it safe and very much within the classic Star Wars vision. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's just sort of what they did. And then Mandalorian comes out, and again, it's breaking new ground. It's pushing off into different directions, but it's still more or less playing in that same Star Wars sort of classic sandbox. But now we're looking at 2020, the end, mid 2021, 2022 into 2023. If we look at what's coming down the pipe, we've had, and what we've just had. So we've had Obi-Wan Kenobi. We've got Andor that's on now. We got Bad Batch coming up. We got Mando season 3 coming next year, and also we got High Republic Adventures. Or not High Republic, Young Jedi Adventures.
Might as well be called that.
Yeah, might as well be called High Republic Adventures. But it covers this sort of wonderful range of what Star Wars can be. Obi-Wan is this sort of like classic revisiting of the myth, nostalgia trip that also pushes explores these legendary legacy characters. Andor is its own thing. It might as well not be set in the Star Wars galaxy at certain points, but it's going to look at the galaxy through a different lens and look at it through a different way. Then you've got Mandalorian. That's that more classic, bring everybody together, a little bit of everything, everything that people love about Star Wars. And then you'll have Young Jedi Adventures, which is, all right, here's something for the kiddies. Here's something for the really little kids, and they can enjoy that. And then Bad Batch will kind of fit somewhere in between all of that as well. And that's what I wanted from Star Wars. Was I wanted there to be those options where you can go, okay, I like Andor. I like this vision of Star Wars. I don't really care for Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. I just want to make that clear. That show, again, I think that show is perfect, but that's neither here nor there. But you can kind of pick and choose the things you like, and certain things will appeal to certain audiences and certain things won't. And I feel like now that Andor is coming out and it is so different, it's fulfilling that promise that I felt when we learned that the Star Wars saga was going to expand in such a dramatic way when Disney took over. So I love the 3 episodes in and of themselves. I think they're really, really good. Are they perfect? No, there's a couple of flaws here and there. But overall, I'm really excited for where this story is going, but also what having this type of show means for the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment and thought on just the idea of it, the feeling of this, it being new. Wow, use your words, Hannah. Where we're trying to grasp the feeling of it, and does it feel Star Wars, and that kind of question. Just speaking from personal experience, I had that same journey with The Mandalorian. When The Mandalorian first came out, I almost rejected it in my mind. I was like, ugh, this doesn't feel super Star Warsy to me. But with time and context and further building of that story, it's like The Mandalorian feels very integral to like the universe and galaxy of Star Wars these days. And it's very Star Warsy. Whereas I think this, because I feel like many people are having the same comment of what we're saying here. This is so great that it's fresh and new, but we're missing that feeling of Star Wars a little bit. But I feel like that's what's going to happen with this show, where as it goes on, and with many years to come, I think in the future we'll look back at Andor and be like, oh yeah, that was like a really like deep Star Wars show that we maybe overlooked at first. But just thinking about. I feel like that kind of happens in Star Wars, where it kind of comes out and we're like, is this Star Wars? And then like a year later, we're like, this is great Star Wars.
This is what Star Wars should be.
Right?
But no, I know exactly what you mean, because it does seem like Andor is going to follow a similar path to what Mando did, because Mando started very removed from the larger Star Wars galaxy. You know, there were Imperials, yes, there were Mandalorians, yes, but we weren't seeing like classic characters show up and do things. And of course,
like, is this Star Wars though?
Yeah,
yeah.
And of course, the last episode of The Mandalorian that we had until next year, who shows up in that? Luke Skywalker and R2-D2. So
this is the best Star Wars ever.
I do think Andor will sort of drift back towards the center a little bit, drift back towards sort of that classic Star Wars feeling. Cassian left with Luthen at the end of this episode. Seems safe to assume they're going to Coruscant. Seems likely that that's where they're going. Likely that's where they'll wind up. So, that brings us to a very familiar place, especially if you're, when we think about the prequel trilogy. We'll and Mon Mothma's out there, Saw Gerrera's out there. These are characters that are going to show up. But, again, I do agree with what you were saying though, Chris, is that this show feels very, very different, and it's going into different territory right from scene 1, which takes place in a brothel. They
starting off with a bang.
Literally.
Here. I was gonna say, were we gonna say that?
They sort of, they don't come out and say it while you're there. They kind of throw it in after the fact, so it's not so. It's not quite.
If a kid was watching this, he would be like, "Oh, look at this cool looking bar."
Yeah,
that's an odd cantina.
Over the age of like 12 is like, okay,
a little bit different than how House of Dragon handled their scene.
Yes,
in yes,
very, very different. But yeah, you have the brothel, you have a child being murdered in a later scene. You have Cassian getting into a street fight where he accidentally kills one person, then murders another one. And then, again, we talked about it, the language gets a little bit spicier than we're used to in Star Wars. And there's some other stuff that goes on in the episodes that we'll touch on later, especially relating to the flashbacks. That's sort of interesting in what it might be, sort of what it could be related to in the real world. But let's talk about the characters of Andor and what we're seeing from them, and we'll start with Andor himself, Cassian, and he is our entry point into the series. He's the only character that we really know in this episode from previous stories, and really all we know about him is how he dies. That's ultimately what we know about this guy. Hannah, I'll throw this to you. What did you think of seeing Cassian at this point in his life and as our introduction to him in these episodes?
Yeah, I think where we meet him in these episodes makes a lot of sense. And I think we meet him at a very interesting point in time where he's starting that journey of that ethical kind of debate of his purpose and his meaning, and the dialogue he has with Luthen in that old building is very telling of that, where he's just kind of going from job to job. He's just kind of he feels like a scrap rat at this point. He's just kind of scurrying around. He's got this adoptive mother figure in his life. He's took away from his home world, and he's got all this kind of, you can feel this trauma almost built up, but he's trying to, figure that out, where that's going to go. And then Luthen's just like, you got to, step up. You got to fight the real fight. If you really hate these Imperials, if you hate how the galaxy is, you got to step up. And I think, maybe that's the first time someone's actually not challenged him, but really presented that question that he can be doing more. And he doesn't have to be a scrap rat, just kind of fighting these kind of street fights, but he can actually become part of something more. So I think it's a really smart place where we met him. That he's very messy and unkempt and very raw. And I think through the series, it's gonna be this kind of molding and shaping and sharpening of the Cassian that we see in Rogue One. And granted that he's still quite violent really. He's still quite, aggressive in a kind of a good way in Rogue One, but he's a lot more kind of sharpened with his decision making, his judgment, and like how he approaches things. So I think it's going to make for a really good character arc, seeing this kind of really tousled, like, oh, what am I going to do? Like, not knowing which way to turn. He's kind of hiding out in a ship at points, and there's just so many elements to where he is now to where we see him in Rogue One. So yeah, I think, great place to start. Makes sense that we see him not so together, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like the way everybody kind of rolls their eyes when he shows up, right? Like he's the guy that he's called in too many favors from all of his friends, and they're just kind of sick of him. Like that happens, there's the one point where they try and shake him down in the street for money, or when the guy with the hounds shows up at his ship and Cassian's sort of fixing it. And everybody's just sort of a little bit sick of him. He's sort of this guy who has all of this potential, but he hasn't found a good outlet for it. And he's kind of got this drive to figure out what happened to his sister, but it seems like he's outside of that he's lacking in a ton of purpose. And that's sort of what Luthen shows up in this episode to do, which is introduce him to this idea that he says to him, wouldn't you rather risk it all for something real? Because you feel like Cassian's been risking it all in kind of jumping at shadows up until this point, or just to survive. And Luthen's sort of like, I can see you have these skills, let's put them to good use. Chris, what about you? What do you think of our intro to one Mr. Andor?
I feel like ever since Disney came along, they've been experimenting with Star Wars, how to tell stories in a different way. And I feel like they've been too careful. They've been too careful to deviate from the structure, the editing structure that George Lucas put in place. And because of that, they've never fully done a dual timeline flashback and current story well. They tried doing it a bit in the Book of Boba Fett, and in some places it worked, and in some places I felt like it did the show a disservice. And there's been little pieces of it in other projects as well. But this is the first time where I felt like they fully executed a story with flashbacks that was balanced and well edited, that actually every moment really informed the character and the story in a good way. And so I loved how this is an origin story for Cassian, but you're picking up the origin from two different points in his life simultaneously. And I thought that was really, really brilliant. And so what you're really doing is you're showing in the current timeline what he's up to now and what he's trying to do and his problems that he has. He basically has so many problems in his life, all these little issues, and you're seeing that. But you're also seeing where it came from and some information about where his kind of deep feelings come from. And that comes from the loss of his family and his tribe and being torn away from them and going through a really traumatizing experience in a very young childhood. And one of the very fascinating things from a plot point of view that you have going on that I want to bring up like right now, but I think we can also get into it more later, is, Cassian said that he had been in this fight since he was very young in Rogue One. Mm-hmm. And, he was talking about fighting against the Empire in that conversation. But we see as a child, he's not put up against the Empire. He's put up against the Republic. Yep. Which is really fascinating. And so I'm curious about that because, I would assume that Cassian is someone who, like many people, probably view the Republic and the Empire as the same thing. And yet you're going to have him come in contact with the Alliance to restore the Republic. I'm sure he will agree with the likes of Luthen and Mon Mothma, and if Bail Organa comes in, about, yes, the Empire is a bad thing, needs to go down. but there might be a little disagreement about, bringing back the thing that resulted in that trauma when he was a child. That was his formative experience as a character. And so I think there's a little bit of tension being set up there that I think is really, really brilliant. So they've provided motivations to his character through these stories. They've shown you where he's at right now, what his problems are, and they've set all of that out and shown a lot about who he is as a person. And they've also shown where the tension points are going to be in the future as well, and they're setting that up. I think to do that in 2 hours of television is really, really difficult to do, and they failed to do it fully in any story up until this point, and as good detail as they've done it now, and as well executed as they've done it now. So just starting with your main character and then going outwards, the show already has an extremely strong narrative foundation that I really hope they build on. Again, I have premiere-itis. I have this thing where I often like the premiere of Star Wars shows better than the shows themselves. This was the case with Rebels. This was the case with Obi-Wan. 2 shows that I was very high on with the premiere, and I felt like it just didn't live up to it after that, except for a few points here and there, like some major finales. I really hope that this show keeps this level of quality moving forward, because if it does, it's going to be extremely solid. It's an amazing start to his character and the narration of who he is.
Yeah, the Republic reveal, that's who that ship belongs to, was the best, like, small, subtle reveal of the episode, if you ask me, because, like, you're thinking, oh yeah, it's the Empire. It's the Empire. Empire's showing up here. And the way it's just sort of subtly mentioned. And we've seen in trailers and stuff, there seems to be clone troopers walking in the streets and that sort of thing. This feels like something we'll be coming back to. And it does. It makes that point. I think it'll make that point a lot more viscerally than anything else, which is the Republic, the changeover from the Republic to the Empire. Not all that significant. It's pretty subtle, at least for the day-to-day life of people. And we see that a little bit in Bad Batch, and we saw it alluded to a lot in Clone Wars. There was some fabulous visual storytelling on that show, where the later we got into that show, the later seasons, a lot of those sets those locations that were Republic based could very easily have been Imperial locations. And I think we'll see that some more in this show in a big way. Ben, your thoughts. Let's we'll complete the round table here with your thoughts on Cassian.
Yeah, so it is interesting going into this. The writers had a challenge because Cassian had a pretty good character arc in Rogue One, if you think about it. He started out as, the first scene is him ruthlessly and callously murdering a guy, shooting him in the back, leaving him for dead, just so he could get away scot-free and, do his job. And the last scene is him selflessly giving up his life so that other people can take this little disc thing and run with it and save the galaxy. That's a pretty good arc. And backing up from that, and prequels often struggle with this stuff of, like, how do you take stuff? There's been a lot of prequels in Star Wars. I'm not just talking about the prequels. I'm talking about Solo, a Star Wars story, Rogue One itself, taking stuff that was established and going, how can we back up from this, when the writers originally started from a place where it was comfortable, like Han Solo being this guy who's just all about, doesn't care about anybody, whatever. Solo has to back up from that and go, okay, well, he kind of cared. He was kind of a good guy to start with, and he was acting like he didn't care. Here, I think they established Cassian as being someone who is very different from what we saw in Rogue One. Someone who is, he's not good at this. He's maybe good at killing. He's maybe good at surviving, but he's not necessarily good at getting away with stuff and being a quote unquote spy. He's good at stealing from the Empire, which is obviously something that Luthen is very interested in. But, he is shaken by the experience in the alleyway on that planet. which again haven't memorized everything. I don't know. It's Morales something. I don't know.
Yeah, those I will say, Ben, those I will say those title cards. those title cards at the that show up and tell you where you are, not very helpful. Not very helpful. Like,
but the first ever mention of BBY in a Star Wars thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Like that's never been used in a story thing.
I hated that. I just want to say, I just want to put that out there. That genuinely my biggest problem with the episodes is that they used BBY. So stupid and so like makes it harder for people to get into this thing. Because now like 5 people, that doesn't mean anything if you don't know already.
But that's the thing is it's like all that text is just gibberish to anybody that's not
it's
like a
nonsense.
uber Star Wars fan. Like
That's
it's
the best
gibberish
thing
to
to be
me.
annoyed at.
I've been watching Star Wars all my life. I don't know what I want to say
Marlana.
Mar-Lago. And I was gonna stop myself. Never mind.
Yeah.
This is also,
anyway,
I think, the time that we've had English Romanized transliteration of Arabesh, I think, because there was that myth of Arabesh they spelled out on screen, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that. I thought that was a good little, the text on screen stuff. I feel like Sherlock made that into a thing back in the day, and it's.
I wonder who
here
directed the episode and what show they worked on prior.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but this show does not hold your hand with any of the gobbledygook of the plots and the locations and what's going on and all this kind of stuff. It's just like, and I think that's probably like my biggest like. I need to watch the episode again and put the subtitles on to kind of get everything and feel like I understand it fully, because I don't feel like I enjoy it enough if I'm just lost.
I had to do that.
Yeah.
I had no choice.
And so, but like, I will level this as a compliment to the show that it feels the most real Star Wars. It feels like it feels like all these people are just real people and they have lives outside of the scenes that they're in and, all that stuff. And then also just like these real locations, it feels like a real universe. It's just business as usual is going on, and we're just seeing a little tiny window into it. They're not explaining stuff to us. We just got to keep up because, whatever. I like that. I like that's kind of what Star Wars has been built upon for so many years of, it's Ben Kenobi in his hut talking about the Clone Wars. I don't know about the Clone Wars. What's that? I don't know. Keep going. You're not going to get everything. You're not getting spoon-fed this stuff. You just keep up.
I agree. I think it was the best level of like, it was quite complex, but just like not too complex that you totally got lost and just gave up. But it was complex enough that you were constantly being like, wait, who's dating? Are they dating? Wait, why is he mad? Oh, is he gonna? Did they dob? He dobbed on? Oh wow! So it's like the whole time you're like leaning in.
Also, a lot of Scottish accents in here. That's just like you gotta listen to it 2 or 3 times to get what they're saying. No offense to all our Scottish listeners.
There's doing the shipment to Wabani. That's like, whoa, okay.
Going to Wabani run.
See, whoa.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
my goodness.
Yeah, we just lost
Tim.
Tim.
Yeah, I know. Good accent though. I enjoyed the Scottish accent in the show, but terrible that it was like a walking red flag. The guy that was Scottish.
Yeah, right. If you're Scottish,
Eric's is Space Scotland. We just figured that out.
Yeah, you're Scottish. You're either turning Cassian in over to the Empire, or you're hunting him down. Love it. Yeah. But I think you're making the point, Ben, that like they really just kind of are trusting the audience to figure out what's going on in this show. They're not trying to like you said, spoon feed anybody or hold anybody's hand through what's going on. Like the whole idea of those guys in blue, the corporate whatever, the fact that they're like not the Empire, but also kind of the Empire, the relationship between, I guess that's the corporate alliance. I'm not really sure. I think
some alliance. Corporate, something alliance.
Whoever they are, the relationship between that organization and the Empire is, it's not clearly spelt out. It's sort of suggested that they work for the Empire and that they kind of get in there, that they try and deal with things before the Empire has to come and deal with them. That, when stormtroopers show up, it's because things have gone really bad and those guys in blue couldn't.
The Empire is non-existent in all 3 of these episodes. Like, there's no stormtroopers, no anything. It's all of these guys.
Yeah, I think the thing that, it's the Corporate Security Authority. I think what's going on here is, when there was a lot of private industry owned by various companies in the Republic, and you saw the Separatist Council be destroyed by Vader in Revenge of the Sith. And so in that moment too, it was getting rid of the heads of industry in a sense, so that the Empire could nationalize all industry. And then use it to do things like create the Death Star and build up the Empire. So basically, now that the Empire quickly has scaled up to owning everything, essentially, and all of the industry, that means that they might not have the administrative capacity within the Imperial Navy to administrate everything and to protect everything and deal with everything. So that you still have these kind of mid-level security organizations on various planets. And they're still kind of jockeying for this position of being able to protect Imperial assets and interests without actually being the Empire themselves. They're still a private group. So the Corporate Security Authority, it's a private group, a security company that's trying to keep their position and not fade into obscurity by doing the job of making sure that everything goes as planned inside the Imperial industry sector, so that the Empire doesn't have to step in and say, oh, we don't need you guys anymore. You all have lost your job or worse. And we're going to just have stormtroopers in the Imperial Navy and Imperial Moffs and those likes actually directly oversee what your job was prior. So there's that pressure that's happening. And that's where you see that conversation come in between the deputy inspector and the chief inspector, where the chief inspector's like, hey, I'm just going to tell them everything's cool because we don't want them getting into our business, very much like Lando doesn't want the Empire in Bespin. But of course, the deputy inspector's like, no, I'm a little bit more of a moralist than that. I think we should look into this. And he has his own personal vendetta that he goes on.
He's a moralist, but also I think he's got his eye on something more in life. I think the chief. Yeah, I feel like the chief inspector.
Not to choke on your aspirations, deputy director.
I feel like the chief inspector, he's good to just chill there. He's good just to live his life out. He doesn't need anything more. But Kyle Solar as Cyril Karn, he wants to be an Imperial officer. I think this is a guy, as weird as it sounds, who dreams of being part of the Empire. And I think you see that in everything that he does, just from the way he's holding himself, the way he's standing, to the fact that his uniform is like properly fitting. The chief inspector kind of calls him out on that. Like, did you get your uniform tailored? And he's like, yeah, a little bit. And then, you see those three.
That was a weird moment. That was an odd. Oh, yeah,
but
what does that
then
say about him?
You see those three cats that he gets to like work for him that are, searching for Andor. They're kind of slouched at their desks. Their uniforms are all baggy. They don't fit right. These three, they're just getting through the day. They're not interested.
They have blue, like instant noodles.
Yes.
Delicious. They look great. That was like the highlight of the show for me. I was like, I want that.
If those aren't
space ramen.
If that isn't available at Galaxy's Edge within the next 6 months,
yes.
Corporate Synergy has failed.
Yes, I will have the blue spaghetti, please.
Yes. That's what it should be called, the blue spaghetti.
The Bantha spaghetti. Because they can get spaghetti out of Banthas probably. I don't know.
Yeah, but the point is, like, Cyril wants to be something more. He's not content with just, clocking in, clocking out. He either, wants to do what he thinks is right, or he wants to rise through the ranks. It's not entirely clear at this point. We're still learning his full motivations.
A lot of times those two things will coincide because they, believe that that they believe in the mission of the Empire. There's many characters that we see that believe in that truly and think it's right, and they want to rise within the ranks of something they think is right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing is, when you see that other security crew show up, led by the other Scottish guy, you look at their uniforms. They're all tight. They're all tailored. They're all, these are the other people. These are Cyril's peeps. These are the ones he should be running with because they also want the same thing.
Although I will say, to do an expose on all of them, because I have very strong feelings about all of them. So there's something off with, both the sergeant and the deputy inspector. The sergeant's the Scottish guy. And so
Sergeant Linus Mosk, another great name.
Linus, I tell you, best show with the best names. Oh, yeah.
Except Tim.
I mean, they're basically they're kind of like like the Bad News Bears. They're like the bad version of Paul Blart, the mall cop. They're incompetent for different reasons, essentially. Like the sergeant's issue is that he's too gung ho. He's too bought into things, and basically, like he believes in his job. And when it comes up that he has an opportunity to do his job after he's probably been sitting on his butt for a while, he's like super excited, like, oh well, we've got to follow procedure here. Like, let's go out and let's kick some butt and let's actually do our job. And he's underprepared for this, and that there's a scene that just proves it, which is when Karn gives an absolutely horrible motivational speech. He is the worst history of pep talks to the guys because he has no idea what he's doing. He's completely out of his element. This is the first time. He obviously doesn't know how to be a leader. He probably got this position out of nepotism because his dad was something, or like he's very good with one of those guys. He reminds me of Gabe from The Office. He has very similar vibes.
Oh my gosh, yes. He kind of looks like him too.
So anyway, so he gives this absolute horrible pep talk, and then he's congratulated by Sergeant Mosk. Sergeant Mosk was like, "Yo, that was awesome, good job." He wasn't being condescending there, or he wasn't pandering or anything. Like he truly thought like, okay, this is going the way it's supposed to go. And
don't think that's it. I read that scene as the sergeant, he's trying to keep the morale high. Like he wants them to work as a unit, and he can't have everybody be thinking like he doesn't want to. He's trying to maintain some sense of unity, and so the applause is to.
This show is very subtle.
Yes.
And if they wanted us to believe that he had concerns about whether or not the deputy inspector should be leading this mission, they would have shown that. He threw himself in gung-ho and completely ate it up the entire time, and that is his flaw. He was overly prideful. He's very much prideful in the same way that the Imperials that they're trying to step in for are. But they're all out of their position. They're not warriors. They don't work for an army. They're mall cops. They're rent-a-cops, as this great comment from Tales from Beyond the Galaxy said. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So like they're all out of their element. So that's their flaw. And then again, as I said, the flaw with Karn is that he does not realize he is completely out of his depth. And what he ends up being shell-shocked by the end of it and completely traumatized by it, to the point where he has the sergeant screaming at him, trying to snap him back to reality, which was an absolutely incredible scene of acting and writing, in my opinion. So these two guys, are some of the most deep antagonist characters I've seen in a bit, of how many dimensions they have to their characters and how kind of unique and interesting they are, because they all have these own little their own little issues, but they're subtle issues. They're not just, oh, this person has a misguided vendetta, or this person's trying to get revenge, or this person's trying to get power. Like, they're very real people with real people issues, just these subtle flaws in their personality that result in absolute disaster and most likely the death of other people.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, they're completely out of their depth. They're completely they're going up against Cassian and Luthen, who are, Luthen's I think I would say probably the de facto leader of the Rebel Alliance at this moment, at least on the ground, what exists of it. I'm curious about where we go next with Cyril Karn. I don't feel like we're done with him. I feel like there's more to his story, but you laid it out there, Chris. He starts off this episode so passionate and so sort of focused on what he wants to do, what he wants to be. But in the end of the episode, he's left, you said it, shell-shocked. And there's that moment where he comes sort of face to blaster with Cassian. And that feels like that could be a defining moment for him. But, now that he's essentially failed and he's realized just how difficult and challenging the real world is, what is his motivation going forward? That's something I think is going to be really interesting for the show to explore. Because I don't think we're done with him. I think he's coming back. I think he's going to be a significant threat through the season, or potential ally down the line.
I kind of get that. I get some very subtle Agent Callus vibes from him. They're very subtle.
I was about to say the exact same thing.
But
yeah.
I do feel like that shell shock. I mean, it's very similar to something that we saw with Finn in The Force Awakens, and we know how that turned out. So it's very possible that he might realize that what he believes in practice is actually not as glamorous as he might think in his head.
Well, and I liked how the actor was talking prior to this in some interviews. I'm like, I don't really consider him a good guy or a bad guy, and or we've heard that before in regards to I'm playing a bad guy, but he doesn't believe he's being a bad guy, so whatever else, that's not something new. But I see what he's saying now. I see Cyril, what does he do that's necessarily bad in these episodes? He's a guy in a semi-powerful position who notices there's a murderer and wants to catch the person who did it. That's normal cop stuff, basically. That's normal good people do. And I like that it's not characterized as he has some kind of vendetta. I thought he might be some type of old rival of Cassie, something like that. No, he's just a guy trying to do his job and really going against kind of the wisdom of his superiors. That's just you could say is corrupt. That's kind of a corrupt thing, and that which keeps popping up for people going well, this is what happened, but we're just going to make up a story and pretend it didn't happen, and we're going to go on with our lives. So we have less paperwork to deal with. And Cyril is not a bad person. So him being a quote unquote good person, where's it going to lead him? Could it lead him to becoming part of the Empire? Does he realize too late that he's part of something good, or does he embrace that and say, hey, the Empire's, I like this Empire stuff, I'm going to keep going with this?
It could be really interesting to have a quote unquote good Imperial, to have a guy who you can understand his motivations, and his motivations may even come from a pure place, but he's just working for the bad guys, quote unquote. And I think that could make for a really interesting story, and it could make for, Star Wars. Star Wars loves its redemption arcs. It could make for a potential redemption arc. It could make for Cassian say, if you really want to, stick up and get justice for, these bad things that are happening, come join us on the Rebel Alliance. But then again, this show also is trying to be kind of different from Star Wars, so maybe it'll set up for a redemption arc and then not go that way and have him still ultimately choose to stick with the Empire. It could be, I feel like there's a lot of ground here, and this is just one of many characters in this show that there's a lot more that can be explored.
And with the comment about Callus, and he might have a similar journey to Callus. I think further on that, I think the main planet, Ferrix, is that the main planet they're on? I think that might be a Lothal kind of situation, like a Lothal season 1, where we're gonna see Cassian go off with Luthen for a little bit and do some things, maybe talk to some people, run into some people. But Cassian is gonna have, even though he's like trying to escape and leave, he's gonna have this like emotional attachment to the planet and like maybe to Bix and to go back to the people there and help them in some sort of way. You know, maybe this authority kind of knuckled down on Ferrix, and Cassian wants to go back and help them. I definitely think it can be like a Ezra and Lothal kind of connection, and we'll go back to all these characters.
Spent so much time developing various characters on this planet who are at least are tied to this planet, that I just can't imagine that they're not going to involve them in future episodes of the show. So I do think there's more to say about all of these characters. There's more that's going to happen.
And there's also there's some footage of a younger looking Cassian that we did not see in these episodes that I'm expecting that we'll not only get more stuff on this planet in the future, but we're also going to see more stuff that's set in the past, as it was in this episode. Again, another compliment of like doing the dual storylines and throwing in the editing and not doing just a linear, okay, here's where he started as a kid and here's where he's going as an adult. We're getting bits and pieces of it as they specifically relate to each other in a non-linear fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of the characters that we're introduced to in this episode that feels like they're going to be a big part of this series going forward is Bix Kayleen. Adria, I've been trying to practice saying this name, but I'm still going to do it badly. Adria Arjona's character. That's my best attempt so far. Chris, I'll throw this to you. We'll start the round table again. Your thoughts on Bix Kayleen and what we learned of her in this episode.
She's an example of what kind of people are forced to be under the Empire, which is kind of almost like unwitting criminals. Like, we kind of learn later from what Luthen says that she's involved in a bit of a racket going on, where she's bribing quartermasters to look the other way as she takes things off of their ships and sells them, which is interesting. So, she's got a lot of stuff going on that's very off the books, very black market dealing. She's definitely a part of the underworld, and in a sense, but then you also see her kind of skirting under the underpinnings of society by that scene where she goes into a shop to ask for a part, and then they send her to the back of the shop, and then she goes and hijacks the communication system to send a message to Luthen about the device that
I don't even remember this.
So that kind of, yes, and I will say that's one of those scenes where it's very obvious that when they are narrating this story, that they're not over-explaining it to us what is happening, because you really don't fully understand that until later. And it wasn't until the second viewing that I fully understood what was going on there. I'm like, well, wait, she's supposed to be looking for this part. Why is she now up doing this communication thing? I don't understand what's going on. And it's because I missed the line, because some of the dialogue without subtitles kind of goes by very quickly if you don't have it blasting in your ear and you're not 100% laser focused on it. It's like, they tell her, oh, it's in this like yellow crate, and then they show her walking past the yellow crate. Now, any Star Wars before this, any director before this, other than Toby Haynes, most certainly would have lingered on that crate for a little bit as she walked by to narratively show, oh, she's going past the thing that she's supposed to go to. Now she's deviating from that. Expect something unexpected. But they just show her. You wouldn't even notice the crate if you weren't knowing to look for it.
Look. This is the first I've heard of a yellow crate. Okay, I didn't hear.
Yeah, I'm like, I need to go back to this yellow crate. Apparently, I'm like, God.
So quickly through the story and not over explaining or even sometimes adequately explaining things in a narrative way. They're just showing you what's happening, and then you just figure it out, and your brain just has to catch up sometimes from context you have to infer what the heck just happened, and it's not until a second or third viewing that like, oh, there's this thing that this character was aware of that I was not as a viewer, which is really fascinating.
Well, and just to sort of add on to that, again, when she climbs up into the tower and is sort of fiddling with that stuff, again, in a previous Star Wars show, more than likely you would have then gotten a hologram of Stellan Skarsgård, and she would have been like, "I've got a new thing for you," and then we would cut to the next scene.
There was a lot of cutting prior to they normally would, so you could just barely infer it. Like, for instance, when the worker at the nightclub is brought in to ID Cassian, that was an extremely early cut where they're trying to figure out, like, is the hologram of this Cassian guy the same as this guy from this planet that was looking for his sister, that then went and murdered the two guards.
That's the one place in the episode where I feel like there's a deleted scene. Definitely
they filmed it, but rightfully so. The editors and the directors were like, we don't need it. We know she's going to come in and she's going to ID him. So why do we need that scene? We don't.
And that's what's kind of brilliant about this show, is that they don't show you what you don't need to see. Like, they don't show you just for the sake of playing out the narration. They're like, all right, you already know she's going to ID him, so let's just show that she's there to explain how he was ID'd. And then once you see her walk up, boom, cut to the next scene. They're chasing him. Like, that's...
So why didn't they show us the yellow box more? I'm still stuck in this yellow box.
Because all you had to do is you had to hear them say it. I think the problem was there is a lot of people missed that dialogue because they were very diverse with the accents in the film and the TV show, at the movie. And again, without the subtitles, it's just you miss certain things. And I think that's something where, if you write dialogue and then you watch that dialogue, you're going to hear the dialogue you wrote, not the dialogue that someone who's never heard it is going to hear. And it comes from a little bit of
that's a good point.
Oh, maybe someone should have scripted out here Last Jedi a little bit in a couple spots type problem. Like, maybe someone should have told them, like, that dialogue was a little bit hard to hear. Maybe clarify and enunciate it better.
But I think it's the important. We're getting what's important, which is she goes into that shop and those guys. Those guys say to she tells those guys, "I need something," and really she's going there for something else. The cover is she's there to look in the yellow box, but for when we're watching it, we don't really care whether or not what her cover is. It could be a yellow box, could be a blue box, could be a red box, could be a green box. It doesn't matter what color the box is what I'm getting at. Anyway,
I'm gonna make a whole theory video on this box now. I'm gonna break down.
It's a big moment.
The 1 second.
Because when I watched it, I just had that sudden realization of, like, this is not typical Star Wars. Typical Star Wars did not have a sequence like this.
It's more of a symbol. It was a symbol.
It's a symbolic moment.
There's a lot of those moments in the show where it's just everything's a little bit different.
I'm going to start writing my YouTube video and making my thumbnail. What's in the yellow box?
You know what it is, Ben?
Red arrows.
You know what it is? Snoke.
There you go. There you go.
Again, I say, anyways.
But she's a cool... So basically, anyway, that was just a long aside because I wanted to shoehorn that in somewhere.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point.
It was a good shoehorn.
She's a character who, she's a character who is a great character in a sense. Like, she kind of is portrayed as a protagonist-like character, but she's still breaking the law. She's still taking advantage of other people, technically. And she's in that kind of criminal underworld element, and she's part of a racket. And so it's really fascinating. And she has a lot of dimensionality with her relationships because, she has this relationship with Cassian where at this point they're business partners, but then it's implied later that they may have been more at a certain point. And then now she's seeing her coworker at the establishment, and she has these very complicated feelings for him because, of course, she thinks he would do anything for her, and then he wittingly or unwittingly betrays her by betraying someone that she didn't want to betray. And then has this anger towards him, but then that is immediately, before she's even able to process that, she's thrust into this situation where she loses him and then has nothing but grief. And she's incredibly traumatized. Again, the actress whose name is it's difficult to pronounce. What is her first name, Dominic?
Adria.
Yeah, Adria. I applaud her performance after Tim with two M's was killed. Jokes aside, like that was pretty intense for Star Wars, and the way that she was just reaching her hand out, trying to grab him, but couldn't because her other hand was handcuffed to the wall. Like that was something else right there. That was really intense. It was a very traumatizing moment for her character at a level that you don't see humans traumatized in such a way in Star Wars a lot, and in such a kind of specific
it's usually
way.
only Ewoks.
It's only Ewoks, exactly. So I thought that was an incredible performance from her. So it is going to be incredibly fascinating to see where her character goes from now that she has this complicated relationship with Cassian, and now she has to deal with this betrayal and this grief just lopped on top of it, and this trauma that she just experienced. Like that's a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah. One thing that's going to be interesting to note next week is how much time do we spend on Ferrix, if any? Because I agree with what everybody's saying, that we'll likely spend a lot of time there, but are we going to go away from it and then come back to it later? That'll be interesting to see. Hannah, we'll throw it over to you now. Your thoughts on Tim with two M's? I mean, I'm sorry. Your thoughts on Bix?
Yeah, Bix is. I wonder if her first name is Wheat. That's probably a very deep, very deep joke. Good stuff. Had to get that in there.
Tomato.
But no, I love this character. I think she's another fantastic, intriguing, complex woman of Star Wars. I think we're doing really well on showing the different women in Star Wars at the moment. Speaking from a woman's perspective, I like the different portrayals that we're getting. But yeah, she seems like a really interesting character, and I do have the question: is she gonna actually become almost like an ally? Not an ally. Wow, an ally. An ally to the start, this kind of beginning of the rebellion, where her kind of line of work is quite tied to what the rebellion is doing, and definitely in Rebels we see as it's growing, they kind of they get ships from random places, or rundown ships, and they kind of do them up, and that's how they start building their fleets and getting pilots and all these things. I wonder if Bix is gonna become involved with that process, and maybe she kind of in the end kind of agrees to join Andor, maybe go off world somewhere to start organizing things, and she kind of works as maybe like a mechanical, helping get parts for the rebellion. So I have kind of questions if she's going to become a bit more connected into the rebellion story. But her as a character, I think she's a good complexity, and I think she gives a good mirror to Andor, and she holds up a mirror to him and his character. And she keeps him accountable. She doesn't just kind of go, okay, whatever you do, Cassian, like I'll help you. She's like really challenging to him. She's like, are you sure you're gonna do this? Is that the right thing? No, she's holds up the mirror, make sure he's like in check with what he's doing, and she doesn't let him get away with too much. So yeah, love this character. Love Bix.
Yeah. There's sort of, her role in the story, as kind of someone who gets things for the Rebel Alliance. There's kind of two ways the story can go for a character like that. There's what you've said, joining up and becoming a bigger part of the Rebel Alliance. Or there's the other way where the Imperials, catch wind of what she's doing and she can't get out in time. So, that does feel like that's also potentially on the table for her. Although ultimately, I suspect, she'll be around for in the rest of season 1 and potentially into season 2. Although, don't know where she is in Rogue One, and that's that's always concerning for a prequel series.
The fact that a character is not in Rogue One is actually like a good thing. It's a mark for maybe they actually survived and had a good life, because everybody in that movie didn't have such a good. It didn't end so well for them.
A fiery inferno kind of death. Yeah, yeah. I'm really fascinated. Go ahead.
So I just had a thought with this whole thing. Well, she could be alive because they could do what they did with Clone Wars season 7 and be like, almost go into the timeline of Rogue One. Be like, oh yeah, these are what like these other side people are doing while all this major stuff is happening. You know, it makes sense why Ahsoka wasn't in Revenge of the Sith because of that season. So, you know, they could do the same thing. Anyway.
Or you can imagine like a flash forward, like after Rogue One, and you can imagine that maybe much the same way that Jyn Erso kind of became famous and synonymous with the rebellion movement, Cassian would have become kind of a legend all his own after that, being part of Rogue One. And you know, how would those characters react to hearing that the person they once knew was part of that?
Yeah, that's cool. This is why I'm a little disappointed that this series is only 2 seasons, because I feel like all of this stuff would be more likely if we had more time. But because they're going to zip through the next 4 years of Cassian's life so quickly in season 2, it feels like a stretch, but it feels like something that I would like to see them do. Hannah, we know unfortunately you've got to make an early exit from this episode, so we will send. Go ahead.
I'm so impressed with like how I thought. Well, I was like, we're gonna cover so much in like the first hour and 20, like, and we've gotten what, like 2 characters in so far.
Yeah, basically.
Like I love how deep this was. But yes, I have to bid farewell early. But enjoy the conversation.
Yeah. Before you go, do you want to give us your final thoughts and score out of 10 for? Let's say all 3 episodes is one collective. I can't imagine we want to break this up into 3 separate scores.
No. Oh man, yeah. I think this story is going to be a really important one to Star Wars as a whole. And like what we were saying at the start, I think just the presence of this show, how it was written, how it's being presented to us, I think is really new and fresh and is what Star Wars needs to kind of, you know, maybe get just a bit more positivity kind of punched into the fandom. But really enjoyed these first few episodes. As much as there was kind of times where I'm like, I need that Star Wars feeling. Definitely by the end of it, I felt very much in the galaxy and in the universe. And I'm so happy to see Diego Luna back on our screens. He's a great actor and he's a great Cassian. So score out of 10, I think I have to give it an 8, a solid 8 out of 10. It probably isn't the most amazing Star Wars I've seen, but it's the most kind of exciting and it makes me so anticipated for what's to come. The episodes were an 8 out of 10, but my keenness to see the next episode is a 10 out of 10. Yeah, definitely very, very keen for what is to come.
That's a good sign. When the excitement for the next episode is a full 10 out of 10, I think something's been done right. Well, thank you, Hannah. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. I'll see you next week.
All right, Ben, we haven't gotten your thoughts on Bix yet. Why don't you give us your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, she's one of the many characters, but probably one of the most prominent ones for being a character that feels very real and feels very, especially her relationship with Cassian. You feel like, okay, these two have a past, not just in a, they might have been, you know, had a intimate relationship. They were working together and doing all this stuff, and a lot of water has been under that bridge. And you know, it's not about, oh hey friends, I'll help you, whatever. Like, you know, Hannah was saying, like, she challenges him. She is not about to take any crap off him. Pretty much, she's kind of very impatient with him, and he's probably, that bridge has been burned a few times and rebuilt as it happens. So I like that. It feels very lived in, that their relationship is very complicated, and you know, that ultimately is something that's going to play into this. But you know, her trying to live another life and do other things, and then that just comes tumbling down when she gets involved with Cassian again is heartbreaking. So I'm very curious to see like where she goes from here, because obviously their pasts are divulging. Maybe we'll get more flashbacks to find out where she came from, or how her and Cassian came together. Who knows? Or it could be, I'm assuming she'll show back up later in the season. but she, it's just this whole event of like each one of these characters, especially her, feels like it's not just like a normal, like you go into a place, you have a main character and you're following that main character, and they go into a place and the person behind the counter and they have a relationship there and it's all explored or whatever. It's like Cassian walks into her world. She's living her own life with her own relationship, her own job, whatever else. And Cassian is a guest in that world and is trying to figure that out. That's really solid writing, that these characters feel like they just exist. They're just there. And you're just having a small, perspective on what their lives are like. And each one of these characters, even down to the people that have like one or two lines, the guy, the street toughs that try to like, convince Cassian to give him money back or something like that. You're like, oh yeah, there's a whole story there. We don't know a story, but like there's stuff that's happened and Cassian's pissed them off and stole money from them or something. And he's made some bad life choices. And there's a lot of people that he's, like we were saying earlier, people just roll their eyes when they see him because he's probably screwed a few people over.
Yeah. This is where it's kind of interesting having 3 episodes all air at once, as opposed to, and then having to go sort of week to week afterwards. The Bix's relationship with Tim, with 2 M's, Timima, I thought, like, it's funny, like, that is all wrapped up within these episodes because Tim dies tragically. And sort of the tension and the bit of a romantic triangle that exists with Cassian there, and the two of them are not necessarily actively competing for Bix's attention or her or for anything like that, but they that there's that sort of macho dude kind of trying to impress the girl thing going on all through it. All of that gets sort of taken care of in what feels like to us 1 episode. So in a sense, it feels rather quick. But then you have to remember that there should be like a week. There should be weeks in between each act of this story, and so it plays out in that way. And so I was sort of, when it ended, I was sort of like, oh man, I thought that this Tim thing would be a bigger part of the series, and I think had the episodes come out one at a time, it would have felt that way. But because we essentially got a little mini movie to kick off the show, it's all done within this 2-hour little adventure that we had. I want to talk about the flashback scenes some more. We touched on it a little bit. The reveal that the Republic is an empire, the Empire is the Republic, and vice versa. And seeing Fiona Shaw's character Marva show up in the flashbacks, which was cool. Which, by the way, I didn't realize Fiona Shaw played Aunt Petunia in the Harry Potter films. I did not recognize her in the slightest. I was shocked. I was shocked. But to see her showing up there, this is the part of the episode that I more than anything else, I need to be further explored. I need to have more context given to it, because as it stands right now, I've felt a little uneasy with the way the show went about it. And that is that Marva essentially kidnaps Cassian, which is bad enough on its face. But then you look at Cassian's all the other scenes with Cassian through these episodes, young Cassian, he's with the people that he grew up with, and there's, again, sort of like with the Tusken Raiders and Book of Boba Fett, there's a lot of like indigenous culture homages and themes and things that are picked up on there. And to have, someone from the British Empire, or the actor from the British Empire show up and take an indigenous kid away, or at least an indigenous coded, I think is the terminology. I'm not really up on that stuff. But to take an indigenous, someone who's clearly like that, it felt, it made me uncomfortable in watching it. And I think it's in the episode, it's sort of played like she's rescuing him. And I understand where that's coming from. And there's certain, I guess, again, from a lot of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view. But, so you can make that case that, he would have been captured by the Republic, could have been killed, it would have been bad for all of them. But I don't know. He didn't really have a choice in the matter. If he chose to go with her, then okay, that's one thing. But the fact she just sort of takes him, I don't know. I need the show to sort of circle back to it. And if this becomes a plot point and this becomes something that is dealt with and explored in subsequent episodes, then all right, I'm on board with it. But as it is now, even if it's just her kidnapping him, even if you take the other cultural elements out of it, it's weird.
Well,
it's weird.
I don't think she's a hero. I don't think she's a hero character. We don't really know what her game is and what she's trying to do. I mean, she's a salvager, presumably. But to her partner that she was with wanted to kill him. So that says a lot about who they are as people.
Yeah.
So just because someone who is used to killing people just decides, I'm going to kidnap this person instead of killing them, that doesn't really make them heroic for doing that. And it traumatized.
And like, what's his life like with her afterwards? Yeah. I don't think we're done with the flashbacks. I certainly hope we're not. But
you have to. Here's the thing too: is I forgot to mention this when I was talking about the dual narration of his story. Is they came to a very Ring Theory-esque convergence visually at the end of the 3 episodes by having him in the ship facing the sun in both situations, and in one it's her in the cockpit, and then in the other one it's Luthen. But there has to be a reason why they're contrasting that. There has to be a reason for it, other than just poetry, and that would be that they have to be showing that this is a new chapter opening up in his life,
right?
And have to be perhaps suggesting that Luthen is actually rescuing, in a sense, Cassian from something that he should be rescued from. And it's actually a good thing, because right now Cassian is in this life of crime, and he's living that very kind of like street rat type of life, borrowing money from people, and
he's robbing Mary to pay Paul kind of thing all through his life.
And now he's being rescued to fight a noble fight by Luthen. So that's probably being contrasted against him being rescued, quote unquote, but actually really kidnapped from the place that he belongs. And the fact that he's searching for his sister, and he's doing that behind her back. I mean, if she was a good person, she'd be out there looking for his sister with him. You wouldn't need to hide that from her. So you do get a little of that. Well, he shouldn't be pushing back against her and hiding things from her because he's rebelling against the mother figure type vibe in the superficial reading of their dialogue. But I think the deeper reading of the dialogue is that she's actually a villainous character, and he's been under her thumb to an extent, and this is him getting out of that.
I'm with you. I need a lot more from the flashbacks. I think it's a storyline itself that you're dropped right in the middle of. Like, I have questions about why is there only kids? Why are they there?
I was wondering, am I missing the adults in this?
No, and it's like it's all up in the air, and I'm like, well, obviously that's something that I think we're meant to ask those questions, and those will be answered in future episodes. And just the whole thing around, like, just the basically of him searching for his sister is a direct result of Marva taking him from that situation, taking him away from his sister. He seems to have a pretty good relationship with her, and she seems to be a kind of a nice person that's trying to be out for his best interest. But ultimately, it would seem, logically speaking, that Cassian would maybe have some resentment towards her, that like, hey, you took me away from the only family that I had. How is that resolved? That's something that I'm fully expecting to come back at some point. If it doesn't, you'll hear from me. You'll hear my complete thing in an upcoming episode.
Yeah, this is what I want to sort of make clear about this is, it could very well be that all this is intentional. And that what we're picking up on here is intentionally there for us to sort of go, wait a minute. This, This doesn't seem right.
Being that this show is
so
so detail oriented, I can't help but believe that this stuff will be answered.
Yeah. And so the idea is sort of saying, like, I'm willing to wait and see. I'm willing to let the 12 episodes play out and then decide, a moment like this, what does it actually mean? Because, if I don't want to make a too broad a judgment on it now without having all the information, but, right now, if this is all there is to it, at best, it seems a little insensitive and not, and you can be sort of insensitive to make a point, but it doesn't feel like it's making a point unless it's followed up on and followed in future episodes. So, there's stuff in this episode that feels insensitive, but to make a point. And so I'm like, yeah, all right, let's do that. But this sort of feels like they didn't really think it through.
Yeah, I am.
If there's nothing else coming down the line,
I'm comforted by the fact that Diego Luna is literally the executive producer on this, and he had a hand in making this, and he being of of that descent, would have a really good eye in regards to proper representation and in doing these things justice.
Good point.
Yeah. True.
Optimistic about that one, but you're right.
But otherwise, like we talked about earlier, the reveal of the Republic, and I loved all the scenes with the kids and them getting ready, and I liked that there weren't subtitles for those scenes.
I thought my TV screwed up there for a bit. I'm like, am I missing something here?
I did briefly consider pausing and like going into the settings and see if there, like, to turn on subtitles if there was anything. I didn't, so maybe there is, and we're still just missing it. But I liked that, you could sort of figure out what was going on based on the intonations and the actions and that sort of thing as well.
It's amazing how you have this show that I agree with a lot what you were saying earlier, Chris, about this show being on the cutting edge of Star Wars, doing things they've never even seen before and pushing Star Wars in a direction we've never seen before and farther than we've seen any other Star Wars project do in quite a long time, doing things we've never really seen in Star Wars before, but yet going back to the sensibility that George Lucas himself put in place, that you can watch these shows and know what's going on and not hear the dialogue or anything, just watching it. It's exactly what happens in those flashbacks. It's a bunch of kids talking to each other. You're completely an observer. You don't know what they're talking about. You know what they're saying. But when Cassian turns around and to his sister, and you know what he's saying, I'll be back in a few minutes, or, I'll see you in a little while, or whatever else, emotionally what is happening, what he's saying, what he's feeling. And that's really good storytelling.
Yeah, for sure. We touched on Marva a little bit there in terms of her relationship to Cassian. Just to kind of circle back to her and is she a villain? Is she a hero? Is she somewhere in between? Is she a person with good intentions that makes poor choices, or vice versa? There's a lot going on, kids. There's this whole sequence where the blue shirts, for I don't know what else to call them, they show up. I think at some point in the episode people call them the Blues, so I'm good with calling them that. They show up, and she's the one that says, all that noise, the clanging, is, that's what a reckoning sounds like. So, I can see her being, an ally to the rebellion, or, some kind of wisdom figure to the rebellion somewhere down the line. Again, if we tackle the other stuff in an interesting way.
These characters, I just, adding her into the mix too. I mean, these are just not one-dimensional characters. These aren't cookie-cutter, black and white antagonist, protagonist characters. I mean, you've got, this mall cop character who is technically serving the Empire and is diametrically opposed to Cassian, the hero of the show's interests, and yet he's doing nothing wrong at face value and could be a good guy. And then you have, Tim with 2M. All he's doing is he's trying to get his girlfriend out of trouble. She's hanging out with this sketchy, shady.
Is that what he's doing, or is he trying to get his girlfriend to himself?
I mean, I would agree that
there's some jealous boyfriend stuff there too, but
I think he turned Cassian in because he wanted the competition, quote unquote, for Bix to go away.
You can't necessarily separate out those things. Like, if he for some reason, had pure intentions, they would be tainted by those other intentions. There's no way to separate that out in real life, in my opinion. And so it's like, I think there was an element of what he was doing that was good. Because, this guy is a murderer. He turned in a murderer. And he cares about his girlfriend's safety, and then he gets killed trying to save her from police brutality. Like, is that really that horrible of a thing? And yet he's also, again, diametrically opposed to our protagonist. So once again, with her, it's the same thing. It's like, she's the character that at points looks like she's on the same side as Cassian because she's against the people he's against. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But is she? Like, that's what makes this show so fascinating, is we don't really know where everybody lies. I mean, even Cassian himself, is he truly a hero or a villain in the show? Is he an anti-hero? We don't know yet, because he begins the show by murdering someone, and like was stated earlier on this podcast, he begins Rogue One by murdering someone.
I hope every episode begins with him murdering someone. Every time we see Cassian, first thing he does is shoot someone in the face, and you're like, why?
This week.
Yeah, he's not necessarily like the pallbearer of morality at this point.
But he's not like he didn't like go out of his way to go murder some guys. Like you could say he was defending himself in a way. He didn't have to kill the second guy. But he's also in a situation where these guys are scumbags. He can't let them go. If it thinks they're going to turn him in, which he gets turned in anyway. You could almost make the point there really isn't any good guys or bad guys. This is just a bunch of people in really terrible situations that they're reacting to.
That's the point of the show. The point of this show, I think, so far, is the message of the show is that the evil of the Empire is just morally scrambling in the galaxy. That's what's going on. Everybody is forced to be in these situations where they have to make these really gray decisions. You have somebody kidnapping a kid from their family. You have someone turning in their girlfriend's co-worker, colleague, friend who she trusts. Like, you have all these things happening. You have a character, in self-defense killing somebody, and then to protect himself from being accused of murder, just killing somebody else out of not self-defense. Like, there's all these situations where these characters that maybe if they were under a just government in a peaceful situation, they would be able to have a good, clear choice between, well, this is the good option, this is the bad option. These characters aren't really left with good options. It's bad option and bad option for a lot of them. And it's just, what's interesting is with human beings and aliens that are as a proxy for human beings in science fiction and fantasy, what's interesting is when you're presented with two bad choices, which one do you choose? That says a lot. It's a lot more sometimes about someone than choosing between a purely good and purely bad choice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just in terms of in terms of other characters that we could talk about in the episode, we are introduced to Luthen Rael. I feel like we've had a lot of conversations about him already because he was so prominent through all of the marketing and the clip, hit the bulk of his screen time in these episodes was already released first in IMAX with the Rogue One re-release, and then on Disney Plus as part of the special preview of Andor. So I feel like we've talked a lot about him already. But
throw him on the pile and say, same thing. He's supposed to be the good guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What a manipulative thing to do. He literally baited and lured Cassian into a situation and is using psychology and his knowledge of his past to try to push him into joining his cause. Like, a lot of people volunteer their time for the rebellion because they see what the Empire's done and they make that clear choice of I'm going to join the fight. You saw Jin doing that, for example. And yet this is a situation where this guy doesn't want anything to do with this, and he's being manipulated into it to an extent by Luthen, who, good intentions perhaps, but is that really the best way to go about things? So another situation where it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And just also Luthen proving himself to be the smartest guy in the room with his bombs and everything. He's ready for every possible scenario that pops up. And I love the fake out with the speeder and all of that good stuff. And the other sort of main character we haven't really talked about is the droid B2 Emo. I loved the way they had him sort of be all pristine and perfect in the flashback, and then you see him in the present. He's kind of, you can tell he's at the end. He's in need of some significant repairs and upgrades and all that stuff. And we know Cassian ultimately winds up with a different droid best friend, so I'm a little worried about where what the future holds for old B2 Emo. But I will say it took me a little bit longer to sort of warm up to B2. When we're first introduced to him, he reminded me a bit of Dio from the Rise of Skywalker. And Dio, I really like Dio. I thought he was wound up being a solid addition to the final installment of the sequel trilogy. But B2, it took me a little bit of time to get used to him, to warm up to him. But then by the end, when he winds up being Cassian speaking to him through the comm link, I'm like, no, please don't do anything to B2. It's not his fault. It's not his fault. So
I like that we've reached the stage of Star Wars where it just it used to be like, if it looks like a human, it talks like a human. If it doesn't look like a human, then it beeps. And now we're just like, oh, just screw it. It talks, but it's got a speech impediment. And it's cute. Yeah. I love B2. Looking forward to getting the action figure someday, or something that'll roll around. I need a remote control B2 to go with my BB-8.
I'll paint Wally red. And
Sphero, where are you at?
I don't think Sphero exists anymore.
What?
They sold so many balls. Wow.
Yeah, back in the day. Or maybe they do. I don't know. But I don't think they do Star Wars stuff.
Perhaps they made a killing with the BB-8 and then couldn't have anything nearly that successful, which wouldn't surprise me.
I feel like the Sphero BB-8s were ever as big as they wanted them to be. They were just.
Oh no, I think the BB-8 was the first one was, but all of the the BB-9E or the R2D2 didn't quite I've got both. I've got all three of them. They're great. They're fun, but the Sphero BB-8 came along at the perfect moment when Star Wars fever was hitting again for the first time in a long time with The Force Awakens and BB-8. There was a certain magic around BB-8 that as great as a lot of the other droids that we've gotten in Star Wars since then, K2, Dio, L3, IG-11, BB-8 really was something special. There was a magic to him that, was kind of impressive to do R2D2 again. It's in a certain sense, it's not all that surprising that they haven't been able to three-peat that success of R2, BB-8, and something else.
You have made the pivot to say, well, we need to do an animatronic Baby Yoda in a pod now.
Coming.
Yeah. But that's about everything. I feel like we've covered just about everything that I wanted to bring up about the episode. We've got a couple of super chats we can get to. But is there anything else that either of you wants to mention before we hit final thoughts? Because there's still final thoughts to come.
Let's do the super chats and then see if anything comes from that and give us more time to think.
Okay.
Well, I look. No, I have a segment here. Okay, I'm calling this Ben's Connections Corner. Okay. This is notes about stuff, and this is especially Especially because I heard someone go like, "There's not enough Star Wars in this Star Wars show. There's not enough stuff recognizable." And they were like, weren't really, doing this as a complaint, but just saying, "Hey, it's not as on." Oh God, I'm not really saying much failure here, but basically, this is all the stuff. Just today, I've taken notes of it, just like, "Hey, I've seen that thing before." The bartender behind the bar at the brothel is an Emrusian. Probably mispronouncing that name. It's a species of which I think we saw in Solo on Dryden's, one of the servers or whatever in Dryden's things.
Same.
The dancing hologram in the background is also another species that I've seen before. Cannot put my finger on that. The space dogs, you may have remembered those also from Solo. A lot of Solo connections in this show, weirdly enough, but it's in the same era, so makes sense. But I think literally they're dogs with masks on. Like that's literally what they are, which is just great. Obviously we get a mention of Wobani. Vetch, who's the big guy who goes like, "He just told me to stand here." That's an alien called Eurodil. We saw those in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And a bunch of other stuff in that era. There's a Y-wing in the yard. You probably already saw that. What you may have not have seen was a freaking Ochi of Bestoon's ship just sitting there in the yard. Like it's literally like right front and center. Just look at it. I'm not saying it's his exact ship, but it's freaking the same like model or something.
The Bestoon Legacy.
Interesting.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it had a name. And also Granick, the little short dude that's like the guy behind the counter in the booth that Cassian's like hassling, trying to get a deal with him. There's a little guy in the background that's just like being annoying. He's played by Kieran Shawn, who played Tito in The Force Awakens, and also like Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, and a bunch of other people in Star Wars. Like he's been around a long time. And also I couldn't help but notice that there's one of those, I don't know what species it is. I'm calling it a hauler alien. It's a big dude. He's like a size and a half of a human, and he's like lumbering along. He's got like these big mechanical arms. That's an alien. It probably is the exact same prosthetic alien, the big creature that is from The Force Awakens when Rey comes in an Ema outpost.
I noticed that guy. You know what I want to. You know what needs to come back? We haven't seen in a while. A Hapabor. I want to see another Hapabor. Missing them.
Where is all the Hapabors?
Yeah,
we're already seeing some. Maybe Ferrix in this Marlala sector. Maybe they're in the same sector as a Jakku. Maybe some bleed over, some aliens, animals, something like that. Maybe.
Yeah. There you go. All right, that was Ben's Connection Corner. I feel like we need some music for it. Like, it's Ben's Connection Corner. Connections with Ben in the corner. It's Ben's Connection Corner.
Somebody clip that out. We just got it. He just nailed it. Just did it.
My own little corner, my own little chair. I can make whatever connection I want to.
There we go. All right, super chats. We got 2 from Joel. First one says, "I love Andor so far, but I don't like how people have been using it to put down shows like Mando. Mando and Andor should be allowed to coexist and have their own tones and do their own things." Agreed.
Okay. So I saw one of the first reviews that I saw from someone on social media about Andor was, this is what George Lucas should have done in 1999. So there's definitely a lot of people wishing this had come sooner and had come instead of what we've gotten. I'm going to say that I would have liked to see it come a little bit sooner, but I would not like to have seen it come instead of what we've had, because I don't think the Star Wars that we've had has been terrible. It's been good, and it serves a purpose and has grown the franchise, and it's something that's loved by many, many people. So I go back to that old that metaphor that I've used before about the restaurant. Like, you don't go into a restaurant and demand that they both remove their most popular dish and then start food that you like. Add what you like to the menu. So can't we just enjoy that they've added this amazing new dish to the Star Wars menu without saying, well, they should have had this instead of the pizza the whole time because the pizza was done. Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, just because they started serving pasta doesn't mean they can't still serve pizza. Come on. But yeah, I obviously completely agree with what Joel says there. That's what I was saying earlier. Like the whole idea of having different things, different parts of Star Wars for different people, and a little bit of Star Wars for everybody. Completely on board.
Yeah, it's a shame that people they spend so much time complaining on the internet that when they actually get to the thing, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I like this thing. Where was this all this time? What was all that other crap?" It's like, just enjoy it, guys. You got the thing that you wanted all this time. Just watch it and enjoy it. Forget about the stuff that you didn't like. Come on.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like, and the other thing is, we often will use other Star Wars stuff as a comparison point just because it's an easy reference for all of us and it's an easy reference for everybody listening. So, we say, this is different from how they do things on Mando. Doesn't mean that how they're doing things on Mando is bad. We're just saying it's different, and this is why it works in this context. But that doesn't mean that the Mando stuff doesn't work in the Mando context. So yeah, it's easy, but it's very easy to go from they wouldn't do this on Mando, but they're doing it here, and I like the way they do it here too. I like the way they do this here, and that's why Mando is crap. So I understand that you can very easily flip into the other stuff, but I do think it's also worth bringing up the other shows just to compare and contrast and see what works and also what doesn't.
It's okay to go hey, I like this show, I didn't like this other show, I wish this show had been more like this show. That's fine, but at a certain point you have to draw a line and go yeah, certain things work for different people and certain other things don't work for other people, and that's what is great about where we're living at right now and the time we're living in and the Star Wars we're getting. Is it's so diverse, it's so different, and you're not going to love everything, but you're going to like something probably, hopefully.
Exactly. And Joel's other super chat, in the canon, one of the things is the slow encroachment of the Empire. Throughout this time, the Empire takes more and more direct control until A New Hope. Of course, in A New Hope, that's when, they dissolve the Imperial Senate altogether. We're about 5 years out from that, so it'll be interesting to see next week or in the weeks to come what the Imperial Senate looks like and how effective or ineffective it is, and what's going on with people like Mon Mothma and the other characters that are working in there that are trying to affect change from within. All right. Any other thoughts? Any other things we want to bring up, or should we hit final thoughts and scores out of 10?
I think I can string everything else into the final thoughts. So.
All right, Benjamin. All right.
I think I've said everything.
All right. Well, in that case, let's do that. Let's go final thoughts and scores out of 10. And Ben, we'll start it off with you. Final thoughts, score out of 10 for episodes 1 to 3 of Andor.
Yeah. So, like I said, this show surprised me in a lot of ways. Some that I was not expecting, some that I may even be a little bit confused by, a little bit, caught off guard by. But I'm willing to give this show a chance, even stuff that I'm not super thrilled with. And overall, just having something that is unexpected, something that is not the same flavor. We've gotten so much Star Wars from, the Mandoverse and whatever else, and with Obi-Wan Kenobi in the same vein, made by somewhat of the same people, Deborah Chow, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, all this kind of stuff. Having this different flavor of Star Wars, I think, is great. And seeing all the reactions, I think, ultimately, if we can come away from this going okay, this is different, whether you like it or dislike it, it's not, Star Wars isn't stale. It's moving, it's growing, it's evolving, and it's great. This show does so many things in regards to the thematics of it, the overall, scope of it is incredible, and doing things, I think with social commentary and all this kind of stuff, I think is great. Like I said, the acting is incredible. I think the story is so deep, some of the deepest and most complex writing we've seen ever in Star Wars, and stuff that does not hold your hand. I think, Star Wars, for the most part in the past, while it can be complex and I think very, very deep, also on the surface can hold your hand and does not stray too far from the whole idea of, this is for everyone. I don't think this show is for everyone. I think there's a lot of people that are not going to like this show. For younger audiences that are not or may not be into this, may think it's boring, whatever else, that's fine. Or maybe people that aren't as into Star Wars, that are just have surface level things, may not have seen the movies, may not know the universe very much. They may be confused by some of this stuff. But I think the show's going to reward anybody who sticks with it and continues on and tries to follow the plot and keep with it. I think the first 3 episodes, I think, work really well. I think it's funny. I was disappointed knowing that there was going to be 3 episodes, not 2. I wanted to string this along. I didn't want 3 episodes things, and it was very overwhelming last night. But now that I've seen it, I'm like, okay, if I had watched that first 2 episodes, I would have been disappointed because the credits on episode 2 come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I was not expecting that. I'm like, wait, it's over already? Like, what? Whereas the ending of the 3rd episode is a very satisfying, very moving, very, thought-provoking ending that you feel like, okay, it's ending, but it's definitely going somewhere, but it feels like putting a pin in this until next week. So overall, I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed with the show. I'm looking forward to the next many, many weeks of watching this and getting into it. And hopefully, any concerns that I have can easily be cleared up in the future episodes. But yeah, I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, I thought when the clanging stopped for a second, that was going to be the end of the episode. And we would pick up. We'd pick up in the next episode with all that stuff. But no, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said, Ben. I think they made the right choice going with 3 episode premieres. It's going to make the next couple of weeks more difficult when it's just 1 episode at a time. I feel like, no, where's my 2-hour movie this week? What do you mean it's only 40 minutes or 38? Chris, what about you though? Your final thoughts and score out of 10.
And this is a show that this wasn't always the show that I most looked forward to. I look forward to Kenobi a lot. I anticipated that show a lot. I continue to look forward to Ahsoka and the Acolyte a lot. Andor is not something that I typically would mention as my top few things in Star Wars that I was excited about, because it was something that I felt like could really be anything, and I didn't really know what expectation to put behind it. I will say that given the opportunity that they've been given, Tony Gilroy and company have knocked it out of the park so far. They've started the first inning with a grand slam, in my opinion. My caveat, and I said this before, is I do have a bit of premiere-itis where I get really excited over premieres of shows, because ultimately it's a little bit easier to write a really good pilot than it is to write an entire show. Like, there are a lot of shows where you can tell, like, someone really thought the pilot out very, very well and knows how to introduce characters and introduce situations. But then to further develop and conclude things, that takes a whole nother level of skill. And to have consistency throughout a show is very difficult. So going forward, I still don't know what to expect. Going forward, my expectations, are still a little bit tempered with this show. But just like some previous projects, I think that the opening act was absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't change really anything about it. I will say that I'm going to blame myself for not fully understanding it while watching it deliriously and sleep deprived, not being able to really focus on it. And so the fact that I need to watch it again with subtitles, I'm not going to fault them for that. I think if I was locked in and just focusing on it completely and of sound mind, then I think I would have, gotten everything the first time around. And I'm glad that, it's a type of show that you can't sleep on. You can't just, walk into the kitchen and start making something while you're watching it. You have to pay attention. And I like that. And so I'm not going to say that.
What'd he say?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to say it's a detractor that it's so easy to miss things if you just, lose a line here or there or miss a shot. And so it's a great start. And as always with my rating system, it comes down to, does this expand upon the movies? Does this do things differently or better than the movies? And I would say yes. I think there are things that this show does that makes Star Wars a bigger thing than it was before this show. And the fact that it has, I have to give it a 10 out of 10. That's my minimal expectation for doing a job as well as possible. Are you expanding upon the source material? Not just, in a lore way, but narratively. Are you adding characters? Are you showing things in a different way, from a different angle? This is Star Wars from a different angle, and that's really, really cool. So 10 out of 10 for me, and big expectations for the rest of the show. I'm really excited about the Coruscant stuff, that because of the previews that we've seen. One of the things I was most excited for in the show was Mon Mothma and how the rebellion factored into it. The fact that I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 before that is a really good sign. So perhaps that's what I'll hate, because I actually have expectations for that. We'll see. Harder to live up to than this, but all good from the beginning. Fantastic.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I really, really, really enjoyed it. Andor has been one of the things I've been most looking forward to, pretty much since they announced it, all the way back in 2018, if you can believe it, that we've been waiting this long for this show to happen. And the fact that we came close a couple of times to it not happening, it makes it all the sweeter to actually get here. And I think these episodes do a really good job of, like you guys have said, of setting up this world, setting up these characters, setting up the relationships between these characters. I did struggle a little bit with, I lost the fact that Karn and Cassian were on different planets for a good portion of the episodes.
Same.
And I feel like that's a bit of a flaw, and one that I can't really when we're scoring it, overlook it. In terms of just enjoying it, yeah, sure, whatever, I don't really care. But as we're scoring it, I feel like that could have been clearer. And I'm also leaving a little bit of room for the show to get even better. And then we'll start hitting those 10s out of 10s, and perhaps even an 11 or a 12 out of 10 if we get to that point. I will also say, I brought this up earlier, but I'll bring it up again now. I never want to see BBY on screen again. That just is unnecessarily confusing. As we said earlier, the titles on the screens didn't really help clarify where things were, because nobody knows what any of it means. But I can also sort of understand when you're just sort of giving the planet name and that sort of thing. Like, that's a very sci-fi movie thing to just do. And if this were not Star Wars Andor, if this were just Andor set somewhere in some other fictional universe, having those things on the screen wouldn't mean anything. But you just have it there just for context, just for a little bit of exposition. But the 5BBY thing was unnecessary and unnecessarily confusing, I think, for people who aren't... If you don't know what BBY means, that means nothing to you. And the people that know what BBY means probably already know that this show is 5 years before A New Hope, or they know how to find out that this show is 5 years before A New Hope. And if you want to put that context there, that this is 5 years before the main movie, you either have to say 5 years before A New Hope, which I understand, okay, you don't want to break the universe, but then you got to come up with some other way of saying it. 5 years before the first Death Star, 5 years before Luke Skywalker leaves Tatooine, 5 years before the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, any of those things would work better. I'll quickly use another example. House of the Dragon did this very, very well in its first episode with 172 years before the death of the Mad King Aerys and the birth of his daughter Daenerys Targaryen, and then the middle part of that disappears and it just says 172 years before Daenerys Targaryen, and that's how long how far in advance this show is from the original one. So there's other ways that could have been done to actually make that clear, because again, this is what I hear from people who aren't really into Star Wars all the time, is the timeline is too confusing. And doing that and saying 5BBY before the Battle of Yavin, like, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. But before the first Death Star, okay, you can kind of pick that up. Before Luke Skywalker leaves Tatooine, okay, you can kind of pick that up. These are things that can be, put together that you can create the context clues. So I never want to see BBY again on screen, not in this show, not in anything else. It's not helpful. The only people that know what it menes already know how far out from the show.
Here's the thing.
So I'm genuinely, including that in my final thoughts, because I'm genuinely taking some marks off for that.
They
It's
need
like,
to.
I'm just gonna go ahead and warn you. This is gonna show up every 3 episodes. Okay, every time there's a time jump, BBY is gonna show up. They're setting this up, so be warned, and maybe just cover your eyes for the first 5 seconds of every episode.
But 1 year later, like 1 year later, or 2 years
But
later, do
counting
anything
down.
else.
Here's the thing. So, this could be the explanation for everybody of what this is, because we know this goes up to the Battle of Yavin, and especially if you include, the
Rogue One and A New Hope, yeah.
which is presumably what you'd expect people to go to from this if they're already coming from this and going back to the prequel because they're interested in it. So perhaps the whole idea of putting it on screen is to actually familiarize a wider audience with the acronym. We'll actually say it at some point, and then on screen, and then everybody will know because it's expositionized.
Well, the good news is that a bunch of people just found out what BBY stands for, because a bunch of people go, "What the hell is that?" They
have Google. You can
5
Google
years
it.
before the destruction of the first Death Star. It's so much clearer, so much simpler, and everybody knows what it means. 5 years before the original movie would have made way more sense.
Or
And honestly,
just spell out before the Battle of Yavin. Just say
before the destruction of the first Death Star. That everybody understands that, because that's.
But there's a problem with that, Dominic.
There's too many Death Stars.
No, it's a spoiler. It's a spoiler. You've never seen Star Wars before, which all the people who've seen Star Wars know what BBI means.
No, they don't. No, they don't. The people that listen to this show, know what BBY means. But the people that are like, oh, I like Star Wars. I watch the movie I watch the new movies when they come out. Or the people that are like, I watch Star Wars here and there. The people that you need to make these shows into the grand successes that they are and can be don't know what BBY means. To them, that's gobbledygook.
That might
as well be coordinates.
Yes. What's a click? But that might be true. I agree. But the problem is, you still have the spoiler issue with the Death Star.
Just say 5 years
don't
before
say anything.
Cassian dies.
Then don't say anything. Or break the universe and say 5 years before Rogue One. Like, I'd rather that.
That would have been the best way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's probably would have been.
I like BBY. I think.
And then that's not breaking the universe, because Rogue One is an in-universe term.
True.
So you can still have the story be told inside the universe.
5 years before the formation of Rogue One.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is the most time we've ever spent talking about BBY on the show, and we never need to spend this much time on it ever again. So I will circle away from my ridiculous complaint and just go back to the 9 out of 10.
Podcast episodes get a 9. This podcast episodes gets a 9 out of 10. We're talking about BBY too much.
Yeah, really.
Meta.
There's only one BB that I want to talk about in Star Wars, and it's BB-8. Damn it! All right, that's
42 years before BB-8.
There we go. Yeah. Like the comments saying, if you didn't know what it was, read it as 5 baby. 5 baby. All right. Well, I think that is just about going to do it for us here, and we can begin to wrap things up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. It has been a blast discussing Andor, and we look forward to doing this again next week at a regularly scheduled time, probably, most likely, unless something happens. I can't imagine anything. 8 days time. Exactly, Ben. Exactly. So we will be back then to talk about Andor episode 4. It feels like we should be saying Andor episode 2. We've already talked about episode 2.
Episode 4 is actually the first episode, though.
Yeah. So this is episode 1 coming up next week. We've seen the original 3. Now we got to go back and do that. Gotta love Star Wars and its interesting release schedules. I don't don't really know how to do the outro,
I'll do it.
Chris.
I'll do it.
I was waiting for you to jump in here.
I couldn't remember. I couldn't
do
remember who does the outro for the review shows. I literally forgot if it was your maybe.
It's been so long.
When we name the shows, like Live from Fall Radio Razor Crest, you would do the outro.
Yeah.
But since then, I can't remember if we went with me or you. I cannot literally. Someone tell me.
Maybe we'll trade like every week, and maybe Ben can do it next week.
We just got to make Hannah do it every week.
I don't like.
Yeah, there we go.
She's got to come back, even if she leaves. She has to come back just for the last 5 minutes.
I see I'm playing this while she's not here. This is
okay. Well, this is how you do the outro. You tell people.
I'm gonna take notes.
You tell people that they don't need to go just watch House of Dragon for 6 days, or in this case 7 days before our podcast comes back. They can go follow at the SWU on social media, and that way they don't miss any breaking Star Wars news or any programming updates throughout the week. But we will be back with another episode on Thursday, which will be streaming live at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Chris, something's going on with your audio, and you're kind of disappearing on us.
Oh, this is why I didn't do it.
Yeah, so I think I can take it from here. Tune in next week at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on a Thursday for more of this. And in the meantime, make sure you're following at the SWU on social media. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast feeds. Punch that subscribe button. And you can also become a channel member on YouTube, and you can sign up at patreon.com/theswu if you want to support the show financially. Ben, thank you as always for hosting.
Oh, it was a pleasure as always. It's fun just showing up, and all I gotta do is watch something, and I'm prepared for the show. Even though I would have liked to have watched that one thing, or those 3 things, several more times before the episode, and done it any more time in the hour. What can you do? It was fun as always. It's nice having one topic for the week, but next week, who knows what's going to happen? We'll have one episode, and then who knows what else will happen. But yeah, it's going to be fun. Can't wait to dive into that. And also, I guess, again, a little less than 24 hours from now, come and hang out on Discord. Go things. I'm going to get that link up for you guys, and it's going to be a lot of fun hanging out, talking Andor, whatever else. So definitely go join us over there. Can't wait to do it all in 8 days' time.
In 8 days' time. And yes, join Ben for that non-podcast podcast on Discord. Chris, thank you for hosting. Do you have anything you want to say here, or do you want me to do this part?
I have nothing to say here, but so what I'll say is I'm processing this in the
As far as the world is concerned, I think you just mouthed a whole bunch of stuff. You sound like you're at the end of a tunnel.
Hello.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. So just, follow Chris at Seek3PO on the internet, and I don't know, follow Culture Slate things and stuff. That's it. That's that. That's what we got. Follow Ben at Ben Hart with no E, and you can follow me at Dominic J25, and you can follow Hannah at the Raeside, Ray spelled R-A-E. That is it. That is it for this one. So we will see you all again in 8 days' time for our discussion of Andor Season 1, Episode 4. But until then, for Ben, for Chris, for Hannah, for all the other wonderful people at the Star Wars Underworld, my name is Dominic, and may the Force be with you. So Ben said he didn't have anything to do to prepare for the show pre-show, other than watch the episodes. But I know this sort of threw him off because he decided to prepare for the post-show during the show. Because I just got a graphic from Ben sent to me to be used as a promotional image for this episode before the episode was done. So well done, Ben, on getting the jump.
I'm nothing if efficient.
Yeah, well done. All right. It's a wrap.